I could read you the more formal acknowledgement, but I think I would want to bring to it a personal note. As Sean said, I've only been here less than a year. Still to complete my year when Melbourne Cup happens, so it is less than a year. And I have to say two things. I must say that since the time that I've been here, and I've learned more about the contributions and the longevity of the indigenous peoples on this land, I'm just in awe that there have been people here on this land for nearly 2,000 generations. And that number just strikes me when I look around that most of us around have probably been here not more than 10 generations, and I've only been here a year. So just that sheer number of that strikes me. But the other thing that I have to acknowledge, which I reflect upon, is that how narrow my view of the indigenous peoples and their contributions was from reading the world history as it is taught outside of Australia. Now, I don't know what's happening to young people in Australia, and I don't know what we're teaching our children now, but certainly as a student in India first and then the US, one had a rather, I would say, myopic view of the contributions and histories of indigenous peoples. And it is good to come here and learn more. The last element I would add is how, in some sense, the scientific knowledge is changing people's perception of all of it. So some of the latest studies that are coming out of museums in Adelaide and something, which we had always known the traditional stories about the longevity, and you might well say, well, you should have just believed them. But somehow when you link it to DNA and you link it to archaeological discovery, it just takes on a whole new level of understanding in people's minds. So look, it's been a journey for me, and it's been a wonderful year, and thank you for having me amongst you. But more importantly today, we're assembled here for the symposium, and I'm very pleased to officially open the Indigenous Data Sovereignty Symposium, which is a collaboration between the University of Melbourne and the Australian Institute of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders Studies. As many of you would know, this year's symposium follows on from the 2015 Data Sovereignty for Indigenous Peoples Symposium, which was held at ANU. Now, that inaugural symposium brought together academics, representatives from Indigenous organizations, and government personnel from Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United States to identify and develop an Indigenous data sovereignty agenda, and to leverage international instruments like the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. This year's symposium aims to build upon that agenda and to demonstrate the local significance of Indigenous data sovereignty with the ultimate aim of improving the ability and capacity of the Indigenous peoples to locally manage their data with respect to ownership, with respect to access, with respect to consent, with respect to collection, analysis, and reporting. And to do this is to inform development, to allocate resources, and set objectives. In the end, the goal has to be to improve outcomes in the areas of health, justice, education, employment, and economic development. And at the University of Melbourne, we understand data's enormous potential to improve public health and lead to better outcomes for patients. We know that when the digital infrastructure is finally in place, and I keep wondering whether there ever will be a thing like finally in place, I think of it more as a continuing evolving journey, because data is accumulating at rates much faster than our ability to contain it and understand it. But nonetheless, as this big data evolution continues, it could potentially transform the way that we predict, the way we prevent, the way we detect and we manage disease. But we also think that big data could also have the capacity to address some of the complex issues of disadvantage for Indigenous Australians. But we must ensure that our Indigenous communities are empowered to decide their local data priorities, and that this must be supported and reinforced by our national legal and policy frameworks, but also by our academic agenda. And that is something to which, as a faculty and a university, we are particularly committed to. So in that regard, I would like to acknowledge the conveners of the symposium for their efforts in building the momentum for Indigenous data sovereignty in Australia. A particular thanks to you, Marcia Langton, who's our Associate Provost and Chair, Australian Indigenous Studies. Also thanks to Sean Ewan, who's our Pro Vice-Chancellor Indigenous and the Director of the Melbourne Poach Centre of Indigenous Health. I would also like to acknowledge and thank Professor Janet McColman, Dr. Kristen Smith from the Melbourne School of Population and Global Health, and Dr. Nikki Moody from the Centre for Studies in Higher Education at the University of Melbourne. In addition, special thanks to Dr. Len Smith, who's an honorary fellow at the University of Melbourne and an academic visitor at the Australian National University. Now, Marcia and Sean, in particular, are senior leaders here at the university, and they are indeed two of Australia's most respected Indigenous academics. Together, they share responsibility for leadership of the university's Indigenous higher education strategy and development. Now, in a role as the head of the Indigenous Studies Unit, Marcia, with her team, works towards increasing the number of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students who enroll in our research higher degree programs, and to develop research areas that contribute to the improved outcomes in Indigenous health, economic participation, and cultural and resource management. As the director of the Poach Centre, Sean and his team provide training and development for emerging and established Indigenous academic leaders, building their capacity to influence and drive the agenda for change in their respective fields of practice. So as you can see, we are continually striving to ensure that our relationship with the Indigenous Australia is central to our vision and activity. And I just wanted to bring to you a little artifact to demonstrate how today's symposium is very much at the heart of the strategy. Now, as you can see, this is a bit of a sales pitch, but this is the copy of the strategy document for the faculty. It's called Beyond 2018, and that all I wanted to show you was that data and health are a major priority, and on the adjoining page is Indigenous development. Now, this probably happened by accident, but it brings home the point that for us, Indigenous development, data, and health are inextricably linked. Often people say that data could be the next gold mine for health. And I think that's a very interesting metaphor that we should watch with care for both the good and the bad. Gold mines have historically been great sources of bounty for areas. In fact, if you look around Melbourne, the city was probably founded on a gold boom. But the history of mining also leaves us with many cautious notes. We have not traditionally always mined with respect for ownership. We have not traditionally always mined in a way that benefits local communities. And we have not traditionally always mined in a way that is sustainable and fair to the future generations. So while I like that metaphor of data could be a gold mine for health, I hope that today you will make sure that if indeed we are to use that metaphor, we don't fall into the traps of all the mistakes we have made in our past mining efforts. But I don't worry that that'll happen, because I am sure we are in the hands of trusted academics and leaders here from the Indigenous communities. So I would leave you here with my best wishes for an exciting symposium. And thank you so much for coming here to the university to celebrate it. Thank you very much.